Brown says, get that India. Big boy.
Maika, Sivo! Call an ambulance! Maybe call a police! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell-Gillard!
Hello and welcome back to an instant reaction podcast on the tip sheet. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020. Joining me to break down, I want to say somber, perhaps a little bit fired up, a breakdown, a big loss to the Melbourne Storm for the Parramatta Eels is my good mate, Sixties. Big fella. We sort of both tip victories for the Eels on the sort of predication that our left edge figures itself out, and guess what? It didn't.
Mate, I'm going to try to be logical to a certain extent, but I don't think I can because emotion is running very, very high tonight. What we saw was the worst performance of the season.
Oh, no, bar none. Bar none. The loss of the Warriors, understandable given who was out. Even other losses where it's been frustrating, they all pale in comparison to what we saw tonight, where it was just a systemic failure.
Oh, it was a systemic failure. It was an individual failure. It was a team selection failure. It was failures right across the board.
Yep.
It wasn't good enough in a game where the season was damn close to being on the line. We saw players playing reserve grade standard. We saw stars playing some of their worst games of the season.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a glass half full. Listeners know that I'm a glass half full supporter, and I'm always looking for the positive. There was no positive in tonight. It was a disgrace. It was nothing short of a disgrace. The team didn't turn up. And we've used that phrase before in the past, and I thought it was a phrase that was buried in the past. Right from the start, I don't care what you talk about with, getting that first try on the board. The Eels tonight were looking for shortcuts the entire game. You could see that in the fact that there were players that were in attack. There was no attempt to win the middle. There was no attempt to lay a platform. We were just shift. There was no preparedness to get into the grind. It was one of the worst games that I've said it. It was the worst game that I've seen from the Eels this season, bar none. They should be embarrassed. I don't know if they will be, but they should be embarrassed by that performance. And we've seen other teams come out and say that they were embarrassed by performances and turn it around. I'm not sure whether we can turn this around because we're still going to have players missing. We have an incomplete roster. Mate, I hate to say it. I think we're cooked for the year. That's how strongly I feel after tonight.
We're pushing a big boulder up a very steep mountain right now, 60s. I'll tell you that. So before we rip into the carcass of this loss anymore, let's give a quick shout out to the sponsors of the show, Big Swing Golf, North Mead, and Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan, and Parramatta. You guys know that they help bring the show to you guys each and every time, so shout out to them. But, mate, yeah, let's get into it. Melbourne Storm 46 over the Parramatta Eels 16 down in Marvel Stadium. Obviously not playing at Amy Park due to the FIFA Women's World Cup. And, yeah, the Eels started brightly here. Sean Russell got over with a really nice finish in that fourth minute. But after that, it was just all Melbourne. Harry Grant went over 1-2, and both of them were just terrible indictments on our defensive attitude tonight, 60s. Followed by Jerome Hughes doing much the same. So those first three...
And I'm glad you used that word attitude because that's what I'm talking about with them not turning up. There were so many things tonight that were evident that they weren't prepared to play a hard, tough game of football.
Yeah.
Here they were. They're against the Melbourne Storm. We're down in troops. So already they know they're going to have to lift big time. Really, really lift big time. And it's like... there was no faith in the bloke beside them. You could see the players looking around to blame someone. That is not a good sign. There were so many signs that I saw tonight, and I'm sorry for interrupting the stats.
No, I understand.
But we saw body language, we saw play, we saw efforts that were that of a beaten team. And we saw it early in the game. And realistically, the Melbourne Storm toyed with the Eels. And I don't even want to talk about the left side. I can't talk about that left side, mate. It's not even worth discussing because we know what happened when the Storm attacked out the Eels left. You know what? They weren't on their own tonight because they attacked the middle just as effectively.
There was a humorous point late in the game where Michael Ennis said that with all the success that the Cowboys had down Parramatta's left, he was surprised Melbourne didn't go there more tonight. I was like, are you kidding me? They scored like 6 tries down that side. So Jerome Hughes scoring in the 27th minute, another soft try. Eels hit back in the 32nd with a try to Jermaine Hopgood, which gave us a glimmer of hope, but that was quickly quashed with Elias Ikatoa striking back in the 37th minute. And each of those 4 first half tries, 60s, I think it's safe to say that the video review is going to be pretty damning because none of them should have been scored. The Melbourne Storm tacked on another 4 tries in the second half, with Josh King, Marion Seve, Cam Munster, and Will Warbrick all going over. The Josh King and Cam Munster tries particularly concerning in terms of the complete collapse of the defense, but at that point the game was already lost. Nick Meaney very good off the tee, 7 from 8. Mitchell Moses 2 from 3. The only real positive about this game was Luca Moretti getting his first career try in the NRL, so well done to Luca there. Had a decent stint off the interchange. Team stats, 60s, 50% possession, some way, somehow. Equal share for both teams. Time of possession very minorly in favour of the Melbourne Storm by 35 seconds, but they were far more efficient completing their sets, 86%, the Parramatta's 74%, and then as you'd expect, they dominated all the attacking stats, more runs, more run meters, more post-contact meters, 11 line breaks to 7, a lot of line breaks in this game, 41 tackle breaks to 26, better average set distance, well faster in the play of the ball speeds, that's to be expected, offloads 14 apiece, going down to effective tackle rate. Both teams pretty ordinary here. Somehow the Eels are better. 86.02% to Melbourne's 85.71, but it sure didn't feel like that 60s. Looking at the tape there, it felt like Parramatta's defense was far more fragile than that of Melbourne's. 7 errors to Melbourne, 11 to Parramatta, 3 penalties conceded to Melbourne, 2 to Parramatta. We won a penalty count. There, wow.
You know what? I actually think Ashley Klein took pity on us.
Yeah, he did. With about 20 minutes ago, he did, yes. But in saying that, we won the penalty count, but got hammered on the... Melbourne got hammered. I'm reading this wrong. Yeah. 6 combined ruck and inside 10 infringements to Parramatta's 3, which then begs the question, I suppose, should the Simbin have been invoked? But also, that goes both ways. Klein was just very whistle happy, or 6 again happy in this game. So that's how it is.
Look, there were things we didn't like about Klein's performance. But
I think we could have gotten all the calls tonight because Melbourne had forward passes, Melbourne had some ruck infringements, and Klein could have given them all to us. And I still think we get beaten the way we played.
Oh, yeah. And we still don't get just beaten. We get absolutely hammered because the only thing that these Parramatta Eels players need to do is go and take a long, hard look in the mirror. I mean, not a quick glance, not, check out how am I looking today sort of thing. They need to stare deeply into that mirror and think to themselves, what do they want out of this season? And what do they think they should be doing when they pull on the blue and gold jersey? Because I'll give them a tip. It's the complete opposite of what they showed us tonight.
Mm-hmm. In terms of notable individual performers, 60s, I mean, it's difficult. It is a bit of an oxymoron when you lose like this, but I think a shout-out, you mentioned to me before we recorded, Jermaine Hopgood, you thought he had a decent game. He went for over 100 metres, had, I think, 58 tackles, 2 missed. So very good there.
He absolutely gets a tick. Absolutely.
Bryce Cartwright, 41 tackles, 2 missed, but only 50 metres on the ground. Luca Moretti came in, made 50 metres, only 10 tackles, but scored a try. So, give him a pass, I suppose, tonight.
Oh, no, you know what? I'm going to give him a tick because when he came on, he brought energy, and that was the main thing that I was looking for from him. I can't point any fingers at Moretti. I can't point any fingers at Jermaine Hopgood. Cardi, one poor decision with an offload. Another one passed slightly early, but I'm not going to fall into a criticism with that one.
Will Penasini, 20 tackles made, 1 missed on the edge. So well done to Will. He also went for 125 metres.
Will was enormous.
But again, criminally underused. I do not know why we prioritised attacking to our left tonight. It was so frustrating. I do not. Yeah.
I've got no idea either. There were so many things that, as I said, that we can question tonight, and it's not even in hindsight.
No,
with this,
no.
because
There was actually stuff called out in our preview podcast here that we were quite vocal on. And yes, we tip wins, like we said, on the basis that the left edge tidies up. But you also made a big point about the opportunity cost of Parramatta in recent seasons of not competing in the ruck or spoiling the ruck the way other teams do, and how it's just not netting us the advantage we would hope it would with the discipline. But this is like the most prescient prime example you could have got tonight, 60s, where we were playing clean ruck. Klein got some early calls against us, and like you said, he took pity on us in the second half. But Melbourne just exploited it, and they just dominated the middle.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been banging on about it in terms of it hasn't given us any sort of advantage when it comes to penalties. This being the fourth penalty count that we've won all year, and the penalty count was 3-2. So we actually got less penalties than our season average of 4.4 in winning the penalty count. That'll tell you what happens. That's there.
Para-football,
and as
baby.
I said, I think Klein took pity on us tonight.
Without a doubt.
And as for the six agains, well, how many did we get on the first tackle for a start? So
there were a few, yeah.
And to be perfectly honest, I think we saw Melbourne pretty much controlling the play the ball however they wanted to. They were releasing the players when they were ready to release the play the ball. We, in contrast, get up ultra quick, allow those fast play the balls. We even saw it on the break where I think it was Bailey Simonson that made the cover tackle on that line break when someone ran through Dejan Arce again. And
Jerome Hughes flopped and got the penalty. Yeah.
No, it was. Oh, you're talking about earlier before that, but no, it was the line break out on the right, the Storm's right on our left, and then the cover tackle was made by Bailey Simonson, but he peeled off the tackle really quickly, and they just passed it to the right, and they strolled over for a try. So where we just do these this clean ruck mission that we're on, and it gets us nowhere. Like if someone can point out any advantage that we get, I'd be happy to listen to it. And I don't think there would be any supporters out there that agree with the clean ruck mission. Now, I was all for it at the start of the year, but what I'm seeing, that was on the naivety probably from me that I believed it would the weight of
the NRO and the referees would be true to their mission statement. Yeah, exactly.
Would fall the Eels' way.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm looking at penalties conceded, and I'm thinking, no, this is a good thing, But then when you look at the penalties that are received, and you realise how minuscule it is. Like to be sitting where they're sitting, and it's not going to change this week with only getting 3 penalties this week. So we're going to be sitting at the bottom of the table there. But you know what? The performance that we put in tonight was worthy of a team sitting bottom of the table.
Yep, agreed. Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not complaining about the refereeing in this. I'm saying just pack it in, BA. Just pack in that tactic of a clean ruck because it is getting the team nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. And the other thing is too, I don't care who you put in on the wing.
I was going to go right there. I said, while we're sort of leveling criticism at Brad, you cannot pick Wonga Blake. I don't care if it's.
I don't want to make a personal attack here on Wonga.
No.
I don't think it's doing the man any good selecting him on the wing. I think it's finishing his career completely. Putting him in first grade. I think it's destroying him mentally. You can see that, like, he is a shadow of the player from the past. And people will argue about, Blake's performances in the past. Let's be feeding him to the bloke. He's got however many NRL games under his belt. Like, it's not a small number of games. He's been a highly paid NRL player at 2 clubs. He is not even like the smallest shadow of who he was in the past.
Yeah, whether it's a combination of injuries or his confidence just being shattered, he is not the player he once was. And like you said, it is important to actually give some credit to what he did for Parramatta in those first few years. He actually had some great games and really good stretches, but that is long gone now. And yeah, look, whether it's Samuel Luizu, whether it's Arthur or Stephen, whether you go even more left field from there, I don't care. It's got to be an option that isn't Wanga. It can't be. I mean, like I said, I don't want to get personal because Wanga is a fantastic bloke. Like everything I've heard about Wanga has been really positive as a footballer and as a player. So, like I said, we don't want to attack him in that regard, but I just think Brad has made a big mistake in the last 2 games in picking him.
Yeah, and look, we acknowledge that the options just
they're not great. Like they're not anywhere near proven solutions. But I think going for a young guy like Luizu or Arthur or Stephen, I think just brings more energy. And they're going to make mistakes, but they're mistakes that you can sort of bear with because they are young. So, yeah, we got that one wrong. Another issue was in a game where we have so much to play for, our star players sort of shriveled up, didn't they? They sort of wilted. And, whether you're talking Mitch, Quint, Junior, they all had their moments where it wasn't great.
No, in a game where we wanted the team to turn up, and again, I'm going to come back to it, the team did not turn up tonight. They weren't willing to roll up their sleeves and do the hard yards tonight. And Brad cannot come out and say that there was effort in the performance, because there wasn't effort in that performance. There were many times tonight where the effort level was zero from some players on particular plays. And it just, I mean, like if we start with the captain, it was the most un-Gutho-like performance from Gutho that I think I've ever seen. I mean, we had times last year where we felt he was carrying an injury because he just wasn't himself. Tonight, it wasn't a case that he wasn't himself. He just had a shocker.
Yeah.
He just had a shocker.
Poor
and
defensive reads, inefficient execution in attack.
Arm grabs in defence.
Mm-hmm.
It was just... Yeah, it was... As I said, it was almost like... dare I say it, I'm concerned that they went down there believing they were going to lose.
Maybe.
I'm almost concerned that they went down there with a negative mindset. Is that possible? I mean, were they looking at last week's game and at their teammates, some of them at their teammates that had problems, and did some of them think in the back of their mind, we can't beat the Storm? Because that was a performance that smacked of, we can't beat this team. And as soon as the blowtorch was applied...
Yeah, they just melted.
Yeah, because the tries came so quickly and so easily. As we talked about, we're talking about those fifth tackle plays where they were just getting over the line from like as straightforward plays as you could see, just running directly at the line on the last tackle. And
it's as much as you do and you should and you can be critical and put the boot into the boys that are on the field tonight, and that left edge struggled badly, like all components except maybe Bailey. I thought Bailey tried pretty hard, but Blake, RC, Davey, the numbers aren't pretty reading, and the tape's even worse. As much as you want to be critical of the players on the field, there's a lot of criticism to be leveled at the guys that weren't there tonight, 60s. Like from Dylan's massive indiscretion off the field to the, Ryan Matterson taking the suspension to start the season, to Reg and Maika, just having really stupid football moments and now costing the team for a month out in the highest leverage part of the season.
22 weeks of suspension, as I wrote about. 22 weeks. The nearest club, 12 weeks.
Goodness.
Now, what does that tell you? Like 10 weeks worse than the second worst disciplined club. Now, I've talked about that we need to stop being a clean club around the ruck. I'll tell you what, we need to get rid of some of the dumb plays or dumb off-field discretions that we've had this year, because 22 weeks of missing not fringe players, but we're talking 22 weeks of missing key players, some of the most important players in the team. I mean, what happens here? Does the club fine the players? I mean, we know that there was a small fine for Dylan Brown, but 22 weeks, it's bad enough with the injury toll. Like, it's a significant enough injury toll this year. But you cannot lose players for 22 weeks.
And not players of the caliber that we're talking about. You know, Dylan Brown, Reagan, Campbell-Gillard, Ryan Matterson. You're talking about really core, integral players. And Maika too. I mean, we've literally seen, again, as critical as we've been of Maika this year, look at the drop-off in performance from him to Wanga and what it's cost the team in the last 2 weeks. So, yeah, massive stuff. And for Dylan in particular, look, Reg and Maika and Matto's paying his dues back at least. He's been pretty good ever since coming back from his 3-week holiday at the start of the season. But Maika and Reg, yeah, they've cost us, but they're going to have to, come back and make a difference. But for Dylan, he needs to be 2005 Andrew Johns, essentially coming back and wheeling this team into the finals. He owes his team, not just the fans, his teammates. Sorry.
Oh, I think he's going to have to make up for it next year, mate. Let's be honest, we're starting to get. We're pretty much at the stage where we need some match results to go the other way. There is nothing that I saw out of tonight's performance. I mean, if they played like that next week, right, the Dragons would beat them. Let's be honest. A performance like that tonight, we're not talking about the Eels playing at their best. I'm talking about a repeat of tonight's performance would not be good enough to beat the Dragons. And it's Old Boys week next week. It's the Blue and Gold Alliance reunion. That's who they're going to be playing up against next week. And you know what? When all's said and done, having the bye in the last round of the season actually turns out to be the worst week you can get it, because it's going to be of no bloody use by then.
Yeah,
it will be wasted. Yeah. Like, there will be no advantage in being there. What's the point? They get an early holiday. That's what it'll amount to. They get to finish their footy early. It's a brutal way of putting it,
but I think it's a very realistic outcome at this point in time. So if they don't win well and win close to out, with what have we got? We got Dragons, Roosters, Brisbane, and Penrith in the last 4 games, or across the last 5 rounds, but the last 4 games for us with the bye. Yeah, so they've got a lot of work to do. And
are they? And from those matches, there is not one where they pull an opponent back. Tonight was one where they could pull one of the competitors back.
Yeah, obviously Brisbane and Penrith, technically you are making ground on guys ahead of you, but you're not catching them. So yes,
no.
That's why the games against the Cowboys and the Storm are being so painful, because they're 4-point games in the context of the final series.
Look, the bottom line is, say 4 weeks ago, the Eels' destiny was in their own hands. They've dropped the ball.
Mm-hmm.
They've dropped the ball. It's as simple as that. And people listening to this might be surprised, because, as I said, I fully and freely admit that I'm a glass half full supporter. Tonight, I find it hard. There is nothing I can defend about our performance tonight. As I said, I can acknowledge some strong performances from some individuals, but there was so much wrong with tonight, and I have to keep coming back to, I fully believe they went down there believing they were going to lose, because that performance smacked of it. And John, I'm hoping that I'd like you to put something about that in the title of this podcast. Like, did the Eels did they believe? Did they go down believing they would lose? Some way you can word that, because I think it's a prime factor. I don't think they believed they could win, and they played accordingly. There was nothing positive about their mindset tonight. Nothing. Like the resilience level. A score out of 100 for resilience, 0. 0. Am I harsh there?
No, I mean, the proof is in the pudding, isn't it? Look at the scoreboard, 46-16. And again, it's the makeup of how Melbourne scored those tries. You know, there was very little effort for a lot of them. It was just, you know, like smashing their way over the line from what should have been relatively easy defensive reads and executions. And the Eels just weren't interested. So, yeah, I got to agree with you that if it wasn't 0, it wasn't much better.
Yeah. You know, a few weeks ago, I was of the opinion that anything resembling a team that didn't turn up was now out of our psyche. I believe that even with the losses that had happened earlier in the season, that the team fought.
Yeah, they battled. Even last week against the Cowboys, as rough as that first half was, they battled. But that wasn't true tonight. Like you said, whether they didn't have confidence in, like, let's say, the left edge, because that sure feels like the biggest weakness in the team right now, but they certainly didn't play like a team with conviction tonight. And against a team like Melbourne, they're going to sense that immediately, and they're going to seize on it, and they're going to punish you for it.
That was I'll come back to it. That was a mentally weak performance.
Mm-hmm.
It really was. So I don't know. Maybe that's the headline. Eels go down in mentally weak performance.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the truth, isn't it? And again, I'm a bit puzzled as to why our priority was to push our attack to the left edge. When you've got Dejan Arce, Andrew Davey, Bailey Simonson, who again, to his credit, is having, you know, a really good season, and Mwanga Blake, who again either dropped the ball or looked absolutely terrified whenever the ball got into his presence. So on the
but see, the Storm would not have been expecting us to go to our left tonight.
And you know, and on the flip side, again, I wasn't
either. Hey, Melbourne, I wasn't either.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It's like the double buff, isn't it? But on the flip side, I'm just left scratching my head as to why Will Penasini is catching a cold down the right. Like, we got to feature him, and we're just not. You know, you got Mitchell Moses, a top 2 halfback in the competition, and he was involved on the left, but he needs to be taking the ball down his side. So I don't know. Yeah, this was a game that was top to bottom, front to back, all wrong, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Look, I guess we'd have to ask our captain and playmakers. Maybe they were following game plans. We don't know. We don't know. But I didn't see training this week. I couldn't say whether they were following game plan. Like, if I'd watched training this week, and I saw them going against what they drilled during the week, I could say to listeners, look, they just went so far away from their game plan, it wasn't funny. But I can't say that. You know, I have to assume that they played according to their game plan, that it was their game plan to go to the left. If it wasn't, well, then the captain has to be answerable to that. And, you know, he didn't have a great game tonight, so who knows? Who knows? I think, what else can we say at this point, mate? I mean,
well, the big question is, how do you fix it? Can you fix it? You know, against the Dragons now moving forwards, what can Parramatta do to that lineup? Can you make changes? Can you adapt tactically? Can you inject a bit of concrete into their attitude? So I don't know. Obviously, we want to see change on the left wing 60s, but is there any other change in the team that needs to be made? Can you make any other change? While the New South Wales Cup team looks a lot better for all the youth that's been injected into it in the last 2 weeks, that means that there's not exactly a whole lot of options to come up into the NRL. I mean...
Well, look, mate, all I will say is if Hayes is fit, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he's going to play, because here's a reality. If Hayes is fit, then we are down one winger. That's all. We're down one winger, and we're having to select Wonga, who I'm even thinking he might, if he was asked, like, I don't know how confident he even feels about himself in terms of playing. You know, is his confidence that shot that maybe he wouldn't even want to play first grade? I don't know. I mean, he probably can't say that, and maybe it's wrong of me to suggest that. But his self-confidence. I mean, look, it's there for everyone to see. You could see the look of resignation on his face when he's made mistakes. So what does it say about where our roster, our top 30 roster is at, if you're down one winger and you don't have options for what you do?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we mentioned it earlier in the podcast. It's a systemic failure, isn't it? You know, we've been critical of Brad and his selection here, but in the same breath, we've recruited poorly. We've managed our top 30 substandardly. Wing is what seems to be, from an outside view looking in, the easiest position to recruit for, to replicate, to sort of mirror in your roster guys below the top level. And obviously the guys that are freaks, the very best, you're not going to be able to cover them the same way, but it feels like every other club, even teams like the West Tigers, can pull out, some, jabroni or Reggie guy that just comes in and does a job. But for Parramatta, we're one winger down and suddenly it's an existential crisis. So we've definitely mismanaged that 160s. And look, it's going to cost us badly.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There would be, I would hope, a review of our roster construction.
Yeah, how we handle recruitment, how we handle our acceleration of talent. Because if you're not going to recruit, you need to be accelerating your juniors to have them ready to play. And, obviously Arf Miller-Steven is probably the guy that's in that spot right now, but they didn't pull the trigger on him this week. So there seems to be left hand and right hand not in alignment here, right?
Well, if you don't believe that the younger pathways players are ready to come in and play first grade, then you have to have players in the squad who are capable of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I guess on paper, Wonga should be able to be that person,
but he clearly isn't.
And the trouble is, he clearly isn't. So, and that was more than apparent earlier this season. So, and I know that attempts have been made to add to the roster before the deadline. There's been players that the club's gone and spoken to. At this stage, we don't think there's going to be a last-minute addition to the roster. But, should it come down to the last hours?
Nope.
Should it have come down to the last hours to get someone added into that roster?
Not with 3, 4, and even at times 5 top 30 spots available, and you consider that Nathan Brown was always going to be moved on. So, no, it shouldn't have come down to weeks into the season, let alone days before the cutoff line for the mid-season transfers.
Yeah, and now we're getting to the business end of the season, and we don't turn up. We just don't turn up. And that is a mental thing. That is an attitude thing. And it's a cliche, but we're basically saying the Eels turned up with, a loser's mindset. There you go. There it is. We turned up with a losing mindset tonight. There is no other way, because if you're not prepared to do, if you're not prepared as BA likes to play that that physical contest, the collision, if you're not prepared to get into a grind in an NRL game of football against a fellow top 8 team, well, then you don't deserve to be in the top 8.
That's the truth.
And unfortunately, the Eels, we couldn't just put it down to, if the Storm had only exploited the Parramatta's left edge, and yes, they got some tries there.
They scored the majority of their points there, but they did plenty of damage through the middle and on our right as well.
Correct. There was nothing. I mean, the reason that our attack looked so pop gun through the majority of that game was we weren't bending the defensive line at all. We weren't causing them any fatigue. We weren't bending it back. We weren't challenging them in a physical contest, drawing them in through the middle. We weren't creating space because we were just going shift, 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 shift. Like we weren't tiring them out. It was just, it was helter-skelter type football, and the Storm were just eating up. They were just eating it up. It was too easy. There were no questions being asked. Mate, look, I'm going to start going over saying the same things over and over again. I don't know that there's any point in going on any further. I don't want to give a 3-2-1. I just want to simply shout out that, you know, we did have some good performers in the team in Jermaine Hopgood, in Will Penasini, in Luca Moretti for his short,
maiden NRL
out
try.
there.
It's,
and maybe we might throw in Bryce Cartwright in there.
Matto was reasonable off the bench again.
Yeah.
But yeah, he gets real thin real quick after that. Unfortunately, none of our star players you can throw into that list, and there are plenty on the flip side that you can put into the. We don't talk about a list. So
and you know what, I mean, we've concentrated a lot on Wonga, and that's not to single him out. It feels like, you know, when I'm thinking back on what we've said tonight, and I'm thinking we're singling him out. No, what we're singling out is his selection. And the reason that we are, as I said, is because it's indicative of the fact that we just don't have depth in the outside backs at the club. We can't be in such a level of crisis with only one winger missing, given that, you know, obviously you've got every squad should have multiple outside backs that and players that are just as capable. I mean, you're obviously going to have your specialist wingers, but in your squad there should be outside backs who you could call upon to be either centre or winger. I mean, what's happening there? It's not. Moving forward, Dylan Brown obviously comes back into the team this week. His absence for 7 weeks has been costly because if we're honest, after the first few weeks, Dejan has struggled big time.
And teams have keyed into his struggles in defense. Melbourne went after him. Cowboys went after him. The good teams are doing their tape. They're doing their due diligence, and they're attacking him.
Yeah. And Dejan this year could have played a role where none of this was highlighted.
Yep.
For example, if he was needed for a week or two when Origin was on,
mm-hmm.
and you had players who might have been, or had players, if Moses or Brown had been injured for a week or two, then he's going to do a job, and he's probably going to do it really, really well. But as you just mentioned there, as soon as we start talking about a 7-week stint playing NRL, it finds a player out when they need to be up for week upon week upon week upon week, right? And once you start to go longer than a month, and there's plenty of coaches will tell you this as well, there are players that are in their squad, and young players especially, who you can get a good performance or two out of them. But as soon as you ask them to be in there every week, if they're not ready, they're going to be found out, and found out quickly. And unfortunately, that's the position that Dejan's been in. And tonight, what we saw was, we saw it last week, we saw it this week. It's a complete disintegration. There's obviously no communication that was going there on the left, because you saw Wonga jamming at a time where Bailey was holding his spot. So it was like there was no point in the jam if the centre was already covering the centre anyway. We still saw Dejan and Bailey, like obviously not communicating because they were coming together. So there wasn't, they weren't operating in sync either. And you've got someone else who is, although he'd been there in the past, was still relatively new to this season. That of course, is Andrew Davey. And so you're talking about all new combinations. Even Sean Lane seemed a stranger out there last week in the time that he was on the field, because he's hardly played this year, and he would have hardly played any football alongside Dejan Arce. And then once you've got Wonga Blake added to it, where Wonga's had a lot of time away from the game this year with injury, as well as playing lower grade football, and he's not used to playing alongside those players. Well, those combinations, they're just not going to happen. And is it going to be all solved by Dylan Brown at 5'8" next week? I don't know. Honestly, don't know. I mean, to me, it's now wait and see who is selected outside of Dylan Brown, because it can all come apart just if you've got one player who's not in sync with everyone else. So, mate, look, I guess that's where we're at. Have you got the stinger there, mate?
Yes, indeed.
You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious.
Okay. Now, this is normally a spot that's reserved for referees, and I think I've already had enough to say about the team. So, you know what I'm going to have a crack about today with this? People who leave shopping trolleys in parking spots. I've seen too much of it in the last couple of days. I'm angry.
A special spot in hell for them, isn't there, 60s? It is.
Talk about being uncivilized. I'm not talking about people who just don't return the shopping trolley. I'm talking about ones that actually leave it in a parking spot. You go, beautiful, here's a parking spot. And then as you get 1/3 of the way into the spot, and it starts to reveal what's in front of you, and there, right in front of you, in the middle of the parking spot, is a shopping trolley.
They're the real psychopaths in society, aren't they?
Oh, mate, you talk about a special place in hell. There should be a place in prison for these people. They should have CCTV film of them and distribute it to all the current affairs shows and put it across there. Put them on front page of newspapers. Bastards.
And
I'm done.
On that segment of what grinds my gears this week, I think we'll wrap things up. Yeah, devastating 2 weeks for the Eels, 60s, against the Cowboys, against the Storm. You had to have one, if not two, and they got 0, which means now you got to win out, essentially, and you got some formidable competition on the horizon. And reinforcements, they're coming, but I don't know if it's going to be enough. So we're still going to be cheering our Eels. Like you said, we're glass half full guys. But on the basis of what we saw tonight, there is a lot of work, a lot of soul searching, and hopefully some answers to be found during the week, because the boys need to be much, much better.
Well, mate, I'm going to send out an apology to Mary Kay, because she says she will tune into the podcast because it helps her get over disappointment from the Eels. You know, that's when she is most, really looks to us to help her get past a bad loss. Mary, we can't help you this week. We're struggling ourselves. Yes. So, and our apologies to anyone else out there who was maybe hoping to get a glass half full. But I think, we wouldn't be honest with ourselves or with you if we didn't rip into this performance tonight. And can we also ask that people don't go making personal comments about individuals tonight, criticize their performance and the game, but let's not make disparaging comments about people as people, because even though we're fired up, it is just a game, and people don't deserve to be have their character or themselves criticised outside of how they've just played a game of football, and it's as simple as that. So mate, just to wrap up again, our thanks to our sponsors, Big Swing Golf at Northmead and Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. Thank you for your support. We hope we haven't gone a bit over the top tonight. It's been one of those games and one of those reactions. So thank you to everyone who's listened. And John, thank you. And yeah, I'd still have to say it. Go you Eels.